What's up, everybody? It's me, E-Man from E-Man's Movie Reviews, and welcome to episode 10 of the recap. This is actually more of a bonus episode because I couldn't wait till the end of the week to talk about this. The Snyder Cut is finally being released. That's right, the legendary, infamous, famous, mythical, classical, whatever you want to call it, the Snyder Cut. Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League is finally going to be released on HBO Max, and I've got all the details here for you. I'm going to give you some background information for those of you that are not really all that familiar with all the facts or the history about it. I'll tell you the key takeaways about the news that dropped early this morning, and I'll give you my own personal thoughts on how I feel about this. All of that coming up next. Alright, so first and foremost, let's start off with some background information about what this Snyder Cut is, what's going on, and what this news actually means. Alright, so let me give you some context. Now, remember, in 2012, Marvel came out with the Avengers. And with the Avengers, they broke all these box office numbers and it made like $1 billion and it was making a lot of noise. So, with all that success on Marvel's end, DC and WB were like, wait a minute, we've got all this gold. We've got like these super popular characters here. We can do this too. So that's when in 2013, Zack Snyder was brought on board to do the Man of Steel movie, the Superman movie, which I thought was pretty good. But once we got Man of Steel, that was supposed to be followed up with Batman v Superman, and then that was going to be followed up with Justice League, and so on and so forth. And ideally, if I'm not mistaken, basically there was like a 5-picture deal that Zack Snyder was supposed to be in charge of. He was going to give us Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Justice League 1 and 2, and then like a 5th movie, whatever that was supposed to be. Now, unfortunately, there were some bumps in the road. After Man of Steel came out, Zack Snyder started working on Batman v Superman, and there was some unfortunate studio interference. The WB executives that were like in charge in the movie studios, they either wanted this movie to be shorter in the runtime or they wanted to add this other element or whatever. But basically, Zack Snyder's vision got compromised in the mix of all of that, right? So what we ended up with was Batman v Superman, the theatrical version that got released to everyone. It just wasn't all that good. It was just a really bad movie. Now, in response to that, Zack Snyder was kind of saying like, that's not my version. Like if you guys only could have seen my stuff, you would have liked it more. So what we did end up getting was the home media release of the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman. Now, that movie did tell a much better comprehensive, cohesive story. Like everything made more sense because it added more elements that were clearly missing in the theatrical version. And even though it still had some issues, it was definitely better than what we got in the theaters. So, given the positive reactions that the Ultimate Edition received, WB was like, okay, let's go on. We're going to keep pushing forward. So Zack Snyder started doing Justice League, the first part. Unfortunately, midway through the project, Snyder suffered a terrible family loss with the loss of his daughter. And obviously that made him kind of like depart from the project. And, WB was just like, yo, we really need this movie, this Justice League movie to be finished. So what they did was they went and got Joss Whedon to come in to fill in for all the parts that Zack Snyder left unfinished. Now, if you recall, Joss Whedon is the one that gave us the first Avengers movie and the second one. So from a business perspective, WB was really convinced that, hey, we've got a moneymaker here. This is a great ringer to come in and make our Justice League movie even better. And unfortunately, WB also kind of lost sight of what made them so unique because they caved in to a lot of the criticisms and pressures from like critics that were saying that the WB movies were too dark and they weren't as light and have that Marvel fun. So they basically compromised Snyder's vision again especially with Whedon and all of his reshoots and everything. I mean, even the color tones and, the humor that was added, it just really made the movie feel very disjointed, and the tonal shifts were bad. It was just not good. So yet again, another theatrical bomb happened. And keep in mind, you're talking about Justice League with arguably like the top 5 most popular comic book characters ever, and this movie just bombs in the box office. So that was a complete miss for WB and DC. Now, after Justice League came out, Zack Snyder, of course, was sitting here like, hey, my version is a whole lot better than what you guys saw in the theaters. So it's kind of like, here we go again. But the difference now is the fact that with BVS, WB did not have to go shilling out an extra $150 million to release the ultimate version on home media. Zack Snyder's version of the Snyder Cut, what it really was like, it was all of the footage that he had captured, but it just wasn't finished. And some things were just, kind of like storyboards, or, the special effects weren't added. So ideally, when people would say that a Snyder Cut didn't exist, what they were really saying was that a commercial finished product of Snyder's version did not exist. What existed was like, if you've ever gone to like a test screening, that's what existed. And what that means is like, you'll go watch a movie and, the special effects are just not there. So you might just see the actors in front of a green screen, or you might see, instead of a big fight, just storyboards, like the ideas on paper, like shown to you instead. So at the end of the day, the Snyder Cut was a very raw, unfinished product, but it was like good enough for someone to take into like a pitch meeting and to just give you an idea of what they were doing, right? Not to mention the fact that Snyder's version originally, and I think this was reported according to the Hollywood Reporter, was 4 hours long. And no movie studio is going to want to release a 4-hour long movie, not typically anyway, because that cuts into their profit. Just to kind of give you a quick idea, the longer the runtime of a movie, that means the shorter amount of times it can be played in a theater. And the shorter amount of times it can be played means the less amount of money that the studios can make off of ticket sales and stuff. So for the studios, they always will be like, cut that movie down a little bit so we can make more money because we can play it more times. Now, Snyder doesn't really care about that, because for him, he just wants his whole vision out there, which can be the case for a lot of creatives. It's hard as a creative to sit there and be like, okay, take some of my vision out. But anyway, again, because of the fact that WB had to sit here and reinvest so much money in the first Justice League movie, the reason why they just were not about to help Snyder out was because Snyder's finished product, his Snyder Cut, it needed at least $20 to $30 million just to finish some of the visual effects and other components that were needed in the film. So it was kind of understandable from WB's perspective. Yes, you have fans that are, saying, release it, we want to see the Snyder Cut. But at the same time, it's like, WB is like, yo, we just spent all this money on this movie that made us a very small return, and now you want us to put even more money into it, and there's no real way for them to recapture that money. A lot of people have always been saying, just drop it on digital, it's fine. But the thing is that dropping it on digital is not going to be the same as if you were to drop it in theaters and, be on a bigger platform and get more money back. But hey, Snyder didn't give up, nor did his very loud fan base. So after months and months of hashtags and, almost harassing, WB and HBO, WB finally caved. So let's just kind of go over the key points of like what actually transpired with this news. So first and foremost, the Snyder Cut is going to be released on HBO Max in 2021. Right now, we don't know if this is going to be coming to HBO Max as a full 4-hour version of the Snyder Cut, or if they're going to break it up maybe into like a 6-part episodic series where maybe we just get parts of the Snyder Cut every week. Also, the thing with this is the fact that HBO, from my understanding, is willing to foot the bill. So that 20-30 million, or it probably is going to be more than that, but that money that Snyder needed, that WB was not about to give up and pay for, HBO is like, yo, we need the content. We need something to draw people in. This is something that's hashtagable and it's been trending for a while. We'll foot that bill. So they're going to pay for the special effects and everything. From what I hear, they're also bringing all the actors back so that the actors can do like, some audio reshoots and stuff. I don't believe that they're going to do actual reshoots just because a lot of the scheduling and conflicts and stuff, that can get really hectic and it can get very expensive. There was also talk that they might be doing things like green screen and face, transplants or whatever. So all of that stuff is going to get really expensive, but they're going to do the best that they can with this $20-30 million, if not more money. My best guess is that this is not going to be Snyder's full vision. I just kind of want to put that out there. He's not going to get traditional reshoots. He's not going to have the huge production that normally would happen, with these movies. So, if the Justice League that we saw in the theater was, let's say, 60% of his vision, my guess is that this Snyder Cut with this limited budget might be like 85, maybe 90%, just trying to be optimistic about that, because they're going to try and finish the visual effects as best as they can. Like I said, they're going to bring back the cast to try and, add some audio components just to kind of help make the scenes, work a little bit better. But this is not going to be the full Snyder version or vision, just because this is super unprecedented. And by the way, I highly doubt that Ben Affleck will be returning. I just don't know. I don't think it's likely. I mean, he's already kind of given up on the whole Batman thing. So it's just not likely to happen, I think. But anyway, as for my thoughts about the Snyder Cut, look, if you've even been remotely familiar with my channel or just anything I've been doing, I love comic book movies so much because I love comics so much. So for me, I don't care what movie it is, if it's Fantastic Four or, to the Avengers, whatever, I'm always rooting for these movies to be successful. I always want them to be successful. I do have concerns about this Snyder Cut movie. Keep in mind that this Justice League movie was meant to be a setup film. So that means that even if we get this, it's probably going to leave us hanging. It's probably going to introduce a lot of different things. And what's discouraging about that is that Warner Brothers has already supposedly kind of sort of given up on the DCEU, or the DC Extended Universe. I mean, are we going to do a Justice League 2? Because that's what this Justice League was supposed to set up. So, they brought in Zack Snyder to be their version of Joss Whedon and Kevin Feige from Marvel put together. That's what they wanted Zack Snyder to be. And in my opinion, that's too much for Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder is a brilliant visual director. When it comes to stories, he can be a little overzealous in a sense. Like, he's such a fan that he doesn't know how to check himself and reel himself in. Perfect example of that is in Batman versus Superman. You brought in Doomsday and you killed Superman. That was such a waste of one of the most iconic, best-selling stories in comic book history was the death of Superman. That should have been Man of Steel 2 or 3 by itself, and you cram that into the story unnecessarily for like 20 minutes. That was a waste. You also took Batman from, or The Dark Knight Returns, where Batman is older, you know, he's coming out of retirement or he's about to retire or whatever. And on top of that, there was news that Snyder was going to kill Batman in these Justice League movies. I mean, and then you also have to wonder, like, what about Jared Leto's Joker? Because they set that whole thing up. Like, is there a Red Hood running around somewhere? And if Affleck is done, is he going to come back? Like, I don't know what the game plan is for WBDC at this point, especially with releasing the Snyder Cut. Outside of appeasing the immediate emotional response from fans, this movie is also going to open up a can of worms that WB has tried really hard to try and close. WB has already said, like, we don't want to do the DCEU anymore. But then they keep a lot of the DCEU characters. But then they also start doing solo movies that are, you know, standalones. And it's like, what are you doing? What are you going to do? What happens if this is, you know, let's say the same thing happens after the Ultimate Edition and we see that it's obviously better than Justice League theatrical version, then what? And by the way, that's a very low bar, you know, and that's another concern that I have is the tribal fandom. Again, I'm a comic book fan. I'm a comic book movie fan. But there are some really toxic fans out there that really give us all a bad name. I mean, I'm talking, and I'm not talking about everybody who happens to like DC. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people that are crazy enough to go online and give people death threats just because they simply disagree with them on just a DC movie. Like, that is bad. But, you know, what I am concerned about, and this goes both ways, by the way, you know, just the fact that people will not, I get the feeling a lot of people are not going to be objective about this stuff. You're going to have people that have hated the Snyder Cut for so long, and they're just going to say it sucks regardless. And then you're going to have people on the other side who have been like showing all this blind faith in the Snyder Cut. And even if the Snyder Cut is bad, they're going to be like, no, this movie is like gold. Look, I can already tell you right now, I'm going to be right there in the middle. If it's good, I'm going to tell you what's good about it. If it's bad, I'm going to tell you what's bad about it. Because I think from my perspective, we as fans in the audience have to realize the power that we have. We are the consumers. The studios, the directors and filmmakers, they are the producers. They make stuff for us to consume. We don't have to accept everything because it's our hard-earned money that goes towards making these movies possible. So guess what? It's no different than when you go to a restaurant. If you go to a restaurant, are you just going to accept any slop that they put on your plate? No, you're going to be like, hey, I have an expectation that your food is going to be good portions, it's going to be warm, it's going to be made fresh, etc., etc. And because of that, here's my money. And the restaurants have that obligation. And I think movie studios have the same thing. So guess what? If this new Snyder Cut is a bunch of slop, I'm giving that back and you're not getting my money. And I think that's, for as loud as we were for telling the studios to give us the Snyder Cut, that's as loud as we should be if the Snyder Cut falls flat, or just any movie for that matter. I shouldn't even say just a Snyder Cut because it's not some special movie. That's with anything. We don't need to make excuses for bad movies. What we should do is help the movie studios learn from their mistakes and give us better content because we've seen it. And you know what a perfect example of that would be? Sonic the Hedgehog. Remember that atrocious looking Sonic that came out? And when the fans said something, the studio said, you know what? We're going to take it back in the kitchen. We're going to remake that dish and we're going to serve it up to you better. And guess what? That Sonic movie was actually pretty good. And I'm so glad that that thing did not look like that weird mutated Sonic the Hedgehog that they were trying to serve us the first time. And guess what? I don't know about you. So please correct me if I'm wrong. But are you going to have a problem if a movie studio says, hey, you know what? I know we said we're going to give you XYZ movie, but we're going to delay it because we want it to be better. Are you going to be mad about that? I'm not. I'm going to sit here and be like, hey, take your time because whatever you give me, I want it to be good. I want it to be delicious, so hopefully that's what we're going to get with this Snyder Cut. Hopefully audiences will be objective and be realistic. I know some people are setting the bar extremely low and they're just saying like, look, I just want this Snyder Cut just to exist. I mean, I'm kind of close to that just because I'm curious. I just want to see. And I do have a good idea that, or at least I have hopes that Snyder will do good enough. It'll clearly be better than Justice League. Clearly, there's no question. That movie was terrible. But we'll see. I'll be here to give it my, most honest opinion anyway. I don't really subscribe to Marvel bias, DC bias. I ain't got time for all that. I'm a comic book movie lover, period. Period. I don't choose sides. Cause I watch everything, I consume it all. But anyway, that's the whole story for the Snyder Cut and all of that. Let me know, what did you think about it, about this news? How are you feeling about it? Are you excited? Are you kind of on the fence? Are you about to go get HBO Max just to watch this? Let me know in the comments down below how you feeling, where you stand. And my goodness, yeah. So 2021 is shaping up to be something very interesting. 2020 sucked. Okay, for movies and entertainment, it sucked. But my goodness, 2021, whew, that is going to be something. But anyway, that's all the time I got for today. Thank you all so much for joining me. I always appreciate it. If you got any questions, comments, topics that you'd like for me to cover in the next episode, hit me up at askeman411@gmail.com. That is askeman411@gmail.com. I've got more videos and reviews to do for you all. And until next time, I'll see you all later.